Hello, this is Jeff Gaudiosi, and you're on misplacedstraws.com where music comes to life. And my guest today is a drummer in a band that has so much buzz about them right now. Prophets of Addiction just released a new record called Face the Music, and it's really captured the attention of rock fans. It's a great mix of 70s glam and 80s swagger with a really modern sound. And here to talk about it all is drummer Wayne Stokely. Welcome, Wayne.
What's going on, Jeff? Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And before we get into the record, let's talk about the band a little bit. You and singer guitarist Leslie Sanders, you guys go back a little, but you
hmm
weren't originally in Prophets of Addiction. How did you get involved now?
Basically, having known Leslie for years, through the Hollywood scene, through our connection to Pretty Boy Floyd, whenever he would come to Dallas, where I'm at, I would go see the band, going back as far as like 2013, 2014, whenever they really kind of got going. And we just became friends and stayed in touch. And then whenever around 2015, when he needed a drummer, he gave me a call and asked me if I'd be interested. And I've always loved his songwriting, so I was like, absolutely. And we got together in 2016 to kind of start writing songs that would eventually become this record. And I mean, all kinds of, you could just say life happened after
Yeah.
that. And then, different things happened. You had COVID, 2 years of that into it. And it's been about a 7 or almost 8 year process to get this record done.
Hmm. And now, when you look at the record, the big name that jumps out is former Ozzy bassist Phil Sousa. How did Phil become
Mhm.
involved? And will he be part of the band going forward, or was it just kind of for this project?
Phil became involved. He's produced stuff that Leslie's done going as far back as a band he was in the early 2000s called City Girls Boys. And Phil's always liked Les, his songwriting and everything. So we had the opportunity to go out to Vegas at Danny Coker, the Count's studio, and do this record and track it and have Phil produce it. And he just became involved kind of in the songwriting and not too much the songwriting, but the song arranging, and ended up playing bass on it. And as far as Phil going forward, I think Phil's going to play the shows that he can do. We're kind of in the process of working out live what we're going to do,
Mhm.
but Phil's going to be involved as much as he can be.
And on the record, whether it's something heavier like superhero or kind of the acoustic side of the band, like Hollywood, there's a total vintage vibe to it. I mean, were you guys going in saying like, okay, we want to do sort of Hanoi Rocks meets Faces, or is it just where Leslie's songwriting goes?
You're kind of the first one to nail that. It was we had a discussion, I remember, about the our backgrounds are kind of all over the place, and the first two Prophets records are kind of more raw and punky, kind of street maybe sounding.
Yeah, a little different.
And me and Leslie were talking, and we had a concerted effort that we wanted to make a modern version of a classic 70s rock and roll record, like a Faces or a Hanoi Rocks, and Michael Monroe are obviously a huge influence, the Dolls, Johnny Thunders, all that stuff. And I remember Leslie saying distinctly, for once in my life, I want a perfectly produced record, you know. So I don't know if we thought it was going to be as slick as maybe it sounds, but I know that was definitely the goal of making a modern classic rock record, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. And I think that perfectly describes the sound when you listen to it. And kind of
Right.
speaking of the Faces, you guys do just this amazing glammed up cover of Maggie May from Rod Stewart. And your version, it works really well. How did you guys end up on that song to put on as a cover?
That was a song Leslie brought to the table that he wanted to do. And we knew we wanted to kind of punk it up a little bit,
Mhm.
rock it up, make it a little bit faster. And something funny, when we recorded it, we forgot to tune it down. So we played it in standard, and we had all of the things tracked before Phil's like, oh shit, we forgot to tune this down. So Leslie had to kind of scream the vocals out of his range a little bit. And when we listened to it back, at first I didn't know if I liked it or not. And then I was like, no, this is perfect. It's because if you listen to the music, it's real clean. Even though it's faster, it's played pretty exact. And you just have this snotty punk vocal over the top. And I was like, this is perfect. People are either gonna love this or they're gonna say we're idiots and it's sacrilege. And that's exactly how we wanted it. So and that's pretty much how it's been so far. People either really love it and get it or they hate it and think we're out of our minds.
Well, it's funny because the first time I listened through the record, naturally that song stands out. And I stopped. I'm like, what was that? I had to go back and listen to it again. I'm like, I get it. I mean, like that
Right.
first listen sort of shocks you. And then the
Yeah.
second listen, you're like, yeah, I get where they're doing it.
Yeah, it was done with complete respect,
Yeah.
but that's kind of the and that's another thing you were talking about the sound of the record is the slickness of the music and the preciseness of the music. But when you add Leslie's voice on top of that, it gives it this grit and this
Mhm.
kind of street thing that we thought was a pretty good combination.
Yeah, well, it's a really good sort of counterbalance, because you have sort of the clean, you guys are all fantastic musicians, and that comes across in the record. But then you have this raw vocal that really sends it into a different area.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
and that's something that we liked the dynamic of that, of, especially songs like I don't know, Wasted Tears or Walk the World that are like really tight, compact pop songs, but when you put that vocal over the top, it kind of gives it that realness.
yeah. And we mentioned playing live, and you guys have done a couple of shows. How is the new material going over? Because it is pretty different from what the band did previously.
Well, we actually haven't done any of this stuff live yet.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
we're actually there's going to be a couple of shows that I hate to be that guy, but we can't talk about
Yeah.
right now that are about to be announced for April of next year that are going to be some pretty big shows. And after that, ideally we would like to get a support slot for somebody to go out for a couple weeks at a time. And that's going to be the goal, maybe a little bit bigger band that fits audience wise with what we're trying to do. And if not, if that doesn't happen, then I'm sure we'll eventually line up our own, 2, 3 weeks at a time kind of run to get out there and start playing this stuff because we really want to get out and play the record.
Well, and the record's getting such a great response, from everywhere, from fans and critics. Does that sort of change a little bit how you begin to look at touring next year? Like now that it's getting such a good response, or you think like, okay, maybe we can do some of these bigger festivals or, get that really good support slot?
Yeah, and that's also something like festivals, maybe some stuff in the UK. Maybe we're looking at trying to get on some of the cruises,
Mhm.
and we're in a kind of weird situation because we're not like an 80s hair band. We're not
Yeah.
modern. So where does like just a regular rock and roll band fit in these days is kind of what we're looking at. But the response, that's one of the reasons we decided to go with Brave Words Records because they really, pitched the idea we want to promote this, like people used to in the past, where, these days it seems like there's all this hype leading up to release day, and then a week later you don't hear a single thing about the record. There's no more singles, there's no more videos, and we're planning on releasing a video like every 8 to 12 weeks, still going forward. So we want to keep the momentum out there and keep it going, not just let it die after release day.
Yeah, and actually, a couple of things off of that. First, you mentioned your label is run by Brave Words, and fans have known Brave Words, the website, for years.
Hmm.
What's it like for you guys to have a label that's in your wheelhouse? It understands what it is you guys are doing, as opposed to a label that handles a million different genres, and the rock band tends to get thrown to the side.
Oh, it's great, and we shopped this to a bunch of, and we talked to probably four different labels before we
Mhm.
went with Brave Words, and it was just a typical thing. You kind of felt like, okay, we're going to throw it out. It's a glorified distribution deal,
Mhm.
and you're just going to kind of get left behind. And then you look at the number of releases, and some labels are releasing 2 and 3 records a week, you know. And so we really wanted to go with somebody that would get behind it and stay behind it. And Michael Brambold and the PR team, Dave Tedder, everybody that works with us and works with Brave Words has been great so far. They really delivered on what they promised as far as that goes.
And the other part, we're saying how things have kind of changed. I mean, Prophets of Addiction, you guys are a band that would have thrived on the Sunset Strip scene in the 80s. But that business is so different now. I mean, you guys aren't out at 2 a.m. papering flyers on poles anymore.
Right. Yeah.
But you guys all did that at one point. How are you adjusting to sort of the change in how you get your music and your band out there?
I mean, it's different. We've all been dealing with it in this band and other bands and having to play the social media game. And it's almost like a full-time job. Sometimes you have to stay on all the different platforms day and night. So we're adjusting to that. And at the same time, trying to keep it's never going to go back to how it was, but we want to keep like kind of one foot in each territory as far as that goes. We're still going to do physical product. We still got physical CDs, vinyls coming. We push the streaming just as hard. So it's really finding a balance and trying to figure it. I think everybody's trying to navigate that. Young kids seem to have figured it out with TikTok and all this stuff, but I don't know. We're just navigating that like everyone else is.
Are you personally like a social media kind of guy? Do you jump in it and say like, okay, this is what I'm going to do? Or are you kind of the one that gets pulled into it and says, no, I got
I
to
don't
post
really
this?
want to be, but I seem to be the guy that does it for all the bands I'm in. So but I'm a bit of a control freak in that regard anyway. So if I wasn't doing it, I'd just be wondering if anybody else was doing it right. So it's kind of that thing. It's a necessary evil, but I don't mind it too much.
And you talk about some of the other bands you're in, one of which are in Lillian Axe. I had Steve Blaze on here when the last record came out a
Hmm.
year or two back. And musically, Lillian Axe is about a 180 from Prophets of Addiction. But as a
Yeah.
musician, do you like being able to flex all of those different parts of your skill sets in different bands?
Yeah, like I have Lillian Axe, which, growing up was always one of my favorite bands. So
Mhm.
to get to be involved in that is a complete honor, and something you never would have thought would have happened. And Prophets is like my rock and roll fix. I have another rock and roll band in Dallas called Planet Size Ego that's a little different kind of rock and roll. And then I have like a straight up European power metal band called Infidel Rising that's kind of my baby. So I get to kind of do everything that I like, which is really cool to be able to. Back in the day, you were in one band, and while that may, you know, you can romanticize that, but that's just not how it is these days. Where you can do one band year round and sustain. So to be able to do all these different things for all the different, because I like everything,
Mhm.
all the different styles is really fun.
And now, what do you personally have coming up? Hopefully we'll be seeing Prophets of Addiction on the road next year. You just finished a run with Lillian Axe. Anything else coming
Yeah.
up for you over the next few months to
Um,
the year?
We got the profit shows that are going to be announced. We're going to figure that out road wise for next year. And Leslie and I already discussed getting together in Vegas maybe in March to start writing another profits
Mhm.
record. At the same time, we go in the studio the first week of January and start the new Lillian Axe record.
Oh, great.
That's about halfway written, and we're going to
Mhm.
start tracking that. That'll be out by spring or summer. I'm in a tour to follow that. And I've got a new Infidel Rising record coming next year as well. So it's busy, busy, busy.
Nice. That's a good thing. The more music, the better.
Right.
Well, we've been spending some time here with Wayne Stokely. The band is Prophets of Addiction. The record is called Face the Music, and it's sure to be on so many top 10 lists as we get to the end of the year. It really is a great record. It's very unique from anything that's out there. I definitely recommend giving it a listen. Wayne, thank you so much for taking some time and best of luck next year with all the projects. And hopefully we can get you back on for either Infidel Rising or Lillian Axe or whatever you have coming up.
Absolutely, Jeff. Thank you so much for taking the time and thanks for checking out the record and liking it. And I appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. We'll talk soon. Thanks.